I now give the floor to His Excellency Jean-Claude Gakosso, Minister for Foreign Affairs and Cooperation and of Congolese living abroad of the Congo.
Monsieur le Président,
Mr. President, Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, the 74th session of our General Assembly, as has been noted by most speakers from this rostrum, is occurring amid an international context that is alarming in terms of peace, security, and the protection of human rights. Events are unfurling before our very eyes throughout the world. These include the emergence of obsolete ideologies that fly in the face of humanism, with mounting intolerance and the glorification of identity-based isolationism, with the exacerbation of sectarian-based mindsets and normalization of hate speech, with the mushrooming fanaticism that has been observed, and proselytism of a myriad of all stripes, with the relapse into national irredentism and the return to the sad context of the arms race. This creates risk of a real armed confrontation amongst states. This creates completely understandable concerns vis-a-vis the future of the world, anxiety and uncertainty that we, the peoples of the United Nations, here represented, cannot continue to sweep under the rug. We, the peoples of the United Nations, meeting and discussing honorably within this august body, we cannot countenance this which we observe, the harbinger of a methodological dismantling of multilateralism which our fathers and grandfathers assiduously forged in the post-war world, on the basis of which today our optimism has been created, our optimism, our desire to see a more generous, fraternal humanity. To be on the right side of history means ultimately to be clear-sighted. And for us to be on the right side of history means to respect the diversity of our world. It means to embrace mutual understanding amongst nations. It means to welcome peace and friendship amongst peoples. It means to stand up for reciprocal tolerance of cultures and customs. It means to uphold fraternal solidarity and universal peace. And it also and especially means to stand at a great distance from egotism and fanaticism, far from contempt, from hatred and marginalization of the other. I stated this last year, and this I repeat. We are but a single race, the human race, and we can never be anything but this divine human race that Providence has established on earth to encounter a shared fate. Mr. President, 4 years ago, the international community adopted here a far-reaching, ambitious 2030 Sustainable Development Agenda with 17 Sustainable Development Goals in my country. And as part of the fight against poverty, the government has established, after a broad consultation with the people, established a national development plan for 2018 to 2022. This plan stresses the importance of universal access to healthcare for all. This emphasis is all the more pertinent in light of the fact that major health dangers today carry risks of decimating entire populations in Africa and our sub-region. Sir, the overriding danger is the Ebola virus disease, which has been raging in the Democratic Republic of the Congo, and this has been declared by the World Health Organization as a World Health emergency. The persistent ravage wrought by this epidemic is such that it is incumbent upon the international community to galvanize, to mobilize as never before. Proactive mobilization can help to deliver adequate support to the government of the DRC in its bold struggle against this ruthless epidemic. Mobilizing is important to ensure that there be means, financial and human means provided. These are critical for a robust and effective response. The second health danger that our people are exposed to today is the unbridled spread amid virtually widespread indifference of counterfeit medicine. This is a phenomenon that has been orchestrated by malign, criminal dispensaries. Counterfeit medicine has been sold to the most destitute. They have been showered upon the wretched of the earth by avaricious, lawless actors. These counterfeit medicines and dispensaries producing or manufacturing them need to be identified as public enemies by all, emphatically, categorically, here at the United Nations, for this genuinely is a sordid agenda of mass poisoning. For our part, our government fully supports the African initiative that has been spearheaded by the Brazzaville Foundation to organize in Lomé, with support of the government of the Republic of Togo, to organize a summit of heads of state fully dedicated to this issue, which touches upon the very foundation of life throughout Africa. The Paris Agreement, sir, that has been invoked by most speakers here, is indeed a lifeline for all of humanity. Notwithstanding the skepticism of some amongst us, we can never overstate the importance of all the vital forces of our era and all the goodwill throughout the world closing ranks to tackle head-on the fight against climate change. Truth be told, we have no choice but to pool our efforts to attempt to reverse the deterioration of our environment, to eradicate the adverse consequences that this will incur for the future of life on Earth and the very survival of our species. One cannot but lament the fact that this vital issue, which will determine the future of humanity itself, is contested still, and this at a time when tangible commitments undertaken by governments before the peoples of the world have not been met and continue to suffer due to a lack of financing. I take this opportunity, ladies and gentlemen, to recall the importance for all of us to make the Blue Fund for the Congo Basin operational. This initiative of President Denis Sassou Nguesso and peers in Central Africa is geared towards protecting the second green lung of the planet. And this is a benchmark for global policies vis-a-vis the protection of ecosystems. Sir, without an environment of peace, security, and stability, it is futile to hope to achieve the development goals that we have set here, to which I've just made mention. It is futile without these conditions in place to hope to achieve development for states, prosperity for people, and well-being for all. Hence, my country, presiding over the International Conference on the Great Lakes region, my country, which has always shouldered our part of the responsibility regarding peace building in that geographic area, my country today welcomes the positive developments that have unfolded in the Democratic Republic of the Congo with the welcome conclusion of the elections, with the establishment of a new parliament, and with the creation of a new government. And this has all occurred amid a context of peace that has been buttressed by a manifest will to achieve national reconciliation. In the Central African Republic, peace is also on the agenda. We welcome the efforts undertaken by President Faustin Archange Touadéra, which the efforts he continues to undertake to restore security throughout the country. There have been arduous discussions, the Khartoum discussions, between the government and 14 armed groups under the aegis of the United Nations and the African Union. And in Bangui, a peace and reconciliation agreement was signed. This bears out the determination of political stakeholders to forge peace and to move towards meaningful reconciliation. So it is necessary to assist these country to help to achieve the difficult process of disarmament, demobilization, reintegration, and repatriation that has been initiated. The international community needs to support this country in rebuilding its army, insofar as not only is this the backbone of the state, but it is also a factor of national unity and social cohesion. Turning to Libya, my country is chairing the High-Level African Committee for Achievement of Peace. We cannot but deplore the fact that fighting has resumed in Tripoli and that the situation is at an impasse. This attests to the fact that the efforts hitherto undertaken have not sufficed to help to bring about a lasting settlement to this crisis. Yet we must continue to take action without ever becoming discouraged. We need to act together, to act in a concerted, cohesive, coordinated way with perseverance, with our sole aim being immediately ending the fighting, resuming dialogue, and initiating national reconciliation. It is clear that only a comprehensive ceasefire and a definitive cessation of hostilities can set the stage for inclusive dialogue to restore constitutional order and conduct general elections. This has been from the very outset the sole agenda of the High-Level Committee of the African Union, and as we see it, this is an agenda of good sense. It is specifically this type of agenda, this frank, sincere approach that has brought an end to the crisis in neighboring Sudan, a most welcome end to the crisis, which we welcomed here, and this represents the fruit of an ancient African palabra, dialogue, which, as is known, is always informed by both thought and wisdom. Mr. President, 30 years ago, with the fall of the Berlin Wall and the end of communism, many of us dreamed of a world that would finally see injustice rooted out, injustice that was related to the complicated post-war history. As Francis Fukuyama, this eminent thinker, put it, we had hoped, we too, that the end of the Cold War would also mean the end of the absurd dispute and fighting amongst nations, these bold nations, especially these bold nations, who together, through monumental sacrifice, tremendous loss of life, managed to defeat the Nazi scourge. 30 years after the end of the Cold War, it is evident that the yoke of the embargo continues to torment the generous Cuban people, the link between peoples of Africa, Europe, and America. And like the country hosting, it also embraces sociology and the visage of a world of the future. The Republic of the Congo, through me, urges those with whom responsibility lies to end this anachronism, to demonstrate political courage, and in a spirit of reconciliation to simply lift this embargo in the name of peace and friendship amongst peoples, in the name of the Charter of the United Nations. This can never be stated enough. The United Nations today, more than ever before, needs to be rejuvenated. Indeed, structural shifts and sociological transformations that have arisen in the world since the advent of the third millennium, the emergence of new forces on the international stage, the emancipation of mindsets, the shift in mentalities that today require an intelligent, deft restructuring of our organization. This is necessary for our organization to be a meaningful mechanism for the benefit of humankind, of humanity, in all of its diversity, a mechanism that is better tailored to reflect the requirements of our time. Hence, for this reason, Mr. President, ladies and gentlemen, the thorny question of reforming the United Nations and its Security Council is vital for our future. If we continue to set this aside ad infinitum, we will ultimately betray the magnanimous spirit of our organization's founding fathers. This is a question of justice. This is a question of equity. And this is a responsibility incumbent upon us all in the face of history. Thank you.
I thank the Minister for Foreign Affairs and Cooperation and of Congolese living abroad of the Congo for his statement.